All right. Now, I already created this GitHub account. So as you can see, this is an empty account. It doesn't have anything. I'm just start to create something. So for this one, I'm going to start creating a new repository. So I'm going to move to the repositories and I'm just going to create a new one. And as you can see, this is the owner. And my repository name is going to be called something simple. Let's say my sample repository. Okay, and I'm going to say this is a repository for testing purposes only. And by the way, this description is optional. The next part is what we mentioned in the presentation. You want to make it public or you want to make it private. It depends on the needs of your project, the needs or who do you want to share with? Do you want to make it public? Do you want to collaborate with something that you mentioned or something like that? So in this case, I'm going to make it public for make it available to everyone. So no problem. Then initialize this repository with a README file. This README is an MD file that is going to be created for you. In that README file, you can create what is the purpose of that repository, who is intended for, any kind of description of your project, and so on. So it is not necessary to include it, but I'm going to include just to show you where is it located at the end. Next one is the git ignore. This git ignore file, .git ignore to be very specific, is a special type that is recognized by Git, and that is going to be helpful when you start doing your code and you don't want to include some files that are not part of the project itself. Let's say, for example, if you're talking about a C# project and you start using NuGet packages, you don't want to include all the NuGet packages into the repository because at the end, when you build the software, the NuGet packages are automatically restored for the people who has the project. So this git ignore file basically is created for ignore which files or which directories are not going to be part of the commits or the push operations. So it is very important because if you don't include a git ignore file, your branches will be very, very huge, very heavy. So please consider using it as much as possible when you create your project. So another example is, for example, if you are working with Node, as you know, there are you can use a lot of different npm packages, but you don't want to include those npm packages into the code, something similar like the NuGet packages. So you decide your project is for Node, then it automatically creates a template for you for avoid including this kind of node file. So for this example, let's say I'm going to create a project in Visual Studio. So this project is going to be something very simple, a hello world from the console application or something like that. I don't know yet. So I'm going to include this git ignore for Visual Studio. And the other one is license. So it depends on what do you want to show to the users. I mean, the kind of license. You can study the different licenses. If your software is for commercial use, is open source, is something for allow people to study, or the people can download the project and use it for their own commercial purposes or so on. So it is a good idea when you have some time to study the different kind of licenses. So in this case, I'm not going to select any licenses. I don't need anyone. And at the end, it says this will set main as a default branch. You can, of course, change the default name in your settings. So I'm going to keep it as it is for now. And then I'm going to create the repository. All right. Now, as you can see, the repository is created. It has the README MD, which is basically this information for now. I can modify it as I want to. So it's gonna be my first commit later on, but not right now. And the git ignore is something that I want to show you. As you can see, it basically says ignore everything that finish with .rs user suo user users cache. I mean, it is a lot of information, but also it has something related to debug public, releases, the architecture. I mean, when you build a project in Visual Studio, it creates a bin debug folder or a bin release folder based on the configuration you have, or even it creates a bin x64, x86, or something like that. So the bin folder, the obj folder. So those are folders that are not necessary in the in another computer, in a computer different than the one that builds the project. So that's the reason it is not necessary to be included as part of the commit or the push process. So this git ignore considers those files and ignores them. Basically, that is what's happening here. Okay. And that's pretty much about the repository so far. So I just want to show you, I have this main repository, these two files, and the main branch. This is the branch which is located in my sample repository. So in order to clone it, now we need to use the tool that I asked you to download, which is the Git, or even in the Git desktop. So let's move forward and clone the project.